Have you ever looked at the news and thought, I could do a better job than that? Imagine if one day, all the grown-ups stepped aside. Imagine a country where the Prime Minister was 16, the Chancellor was 17, and the people making the big decisions were all under 25. What would that world look like? Would it be a place full of fun and laughter, or would it be total chaos? It's a funny thought, isn't it? But it's also an exciting one. A world run by young people would certainly be different. It would be a place where new ideas could grow, like flowers in a freshly watered garden. I think the very first thing you'd notice is the energy. The government buildings wouldn't be quiet, stuffy places anymore. They would be buzzing with music, chatter, and brilliant, bright ideas. The leaders would wear hoodies and trainers, not stuffy suits. They would hold meetings on beanbags, scribbling plans on huge whiteboards with colorful pens. Their speeches wouldn't be long and boring. They would be short, punchy, and full of passion. They would talk about things that really matter to young people, like having safe places to hang out and making sure the planet is looked after for everyone's future. It would be a government you could actually relate to. The leaders would be chosen not because of how much money they have or who they know, but because of their great ideas and their kind hearts. Perhaps there would be a national talent show to find the best person to be in charge of arts and culture. Maybe the Minister for the Environment would be the person who had organized the biggest climate change protest in their school. They would be people who weren't afraid to dream big. They would want to build a world that was fair for everyone, no matter how old you were or where you came from. They would remember what it felt like to be small and to feel like nobody was listening. Of course, it wouldn't all be easy. The grown-ups would be watching, shaking their heads and saying, "They don't know what they're doing." Some people might be scared of so much change all at once. The young leaders would have to prove that they were serious. They would have to show everyone that youth doesn't mean you can't be responsible. They would need to listen to advice, even from the older generations, but they would make the final decisions themselves. It would be their chance to build a nation from the ground up, based on hope and a belief that things can always, always be better. The first new laws would probably be all about school. Imagine a school day that starts at 10 in the morning. No more waking up when it's still dark and feeling sleepy all through your first lesson. The young leaders would know that teenagers' brains work differently and that a later start would mean everyone could learn better. Lessons wouldn't just be about maths and history. There would be classes on things you really need to know. You could learn how to manage your money, how to cook healthy meals, how to fix a leaky tap, or even how to be a kind and supportive friend. School would become a place that prepares you for real life. Work would change completely too. The idea of working from 9 to 5 days a week, would seem very old-fashioned. Youth leaders would introduce a 4-day working week, giving everyone an extra day to rest, be with their families, or follow their hobbies. They would also create a law that said every big company had to offer apprenticeships to young people, so they could learn on the job instead of just reading about it. The minimum wage would be a living wage, meaning it would be high enough for anyone with a job to afford a decent place to live and good food to eat. Work would be about more than just making money. It would be about feeling valued. Play would become a national priority. Every town would have amazing free-to-use facilities. Think huge skate parks, colorful art studios with endless supplies, music rooms with instruments you could borrow, and quiet libraries with comfy sofas for reading. Parks wouldn't just be a bit of grass and a rusty swing. They would have adventure playgrounds, outdoor cinemas in the summer, and safe places for friends to meet up after school. The government would believe that having fun is just as important as working hard. They would understand that play is where you make friends, learn new skills, and let your imagination run wild and free. And what about the rules for looking after each other? There would be a big focus on mental health. Every school and workplace would have free counselors you could talk to about anything, with no judgment. Bullying, both online and in real life, would be taken incredibly seriously, with new laws to protect people. There would be a National Kindness Day every month, where everyone would be encouraged to do something nice for a stranger. The young leaders would want to create a society where looking out for one another was the most important rule of all, a place where no one had to feel lonely or scared. When faced with a big problem, like poverty or pollution, grown-up leaders often do things the way they've always been done. They have long, slow meetings and write complicated reports that are hard to understand. Young leaders would be different. They would be much more creative and would think outside the box. For a problem like homelessness, they might not just build boring shelters. Instead, they might launch a huge competition for young architects to design cool, eco-friendly mini-homes. They would use social media to get thousands of volunteers to help build them, turning a big problem into an exciting community project that everyone could be proud of. Young people are brilliant with technology, and they would use it to solve all sorts of problems. Instead of long queues at the doctor's office, you could have a video call with a nurse on your phone. To make sure everyone's voice was heard in government, they would create a special app where you could vote on new laws directly from your tablet. They could use drones to plant millions of trees in areas that needed them, or to deliver medicine to people in remote places. They wouldn't be afraid of new technology. They would see it as a powerful tool to make life easier and fairer for absolutely everyone in the country. They would also be much better at collaborating. Young people are used to working together on group projects at school, and they would bring that spirit to government. If there was a disagreement between the Minister for Health and the Minister for Finance, they wouldn't shout at each other on television. They would probably order a pizza, sit down together, and brainstorm ideas until they found a solution that worked for both of them. They would listen to each other's points of view and be willing to compromise. They would know that the best ideas often come when lots of different people work together as a team. Most importantly, young leaders would solve problems with empathy. They would remember what it feels like to be worried about exams, to feel left out, or to be scared about the future of the planet. When making a decision about the environment, they wouldn't just think about money, they would think about the animals that could lose their homes. When making rules about education, they would think about the student who finds it hard to concentrate in a noisy classroom. They would lead with their hearts as well as their heads, always trying to imagine how their decisions would affect real people in their everyday lives. The best thing about a country run by the young would be the feeling of hope. It would be a place bursting with optimism and the belief that a better world is possible. The leaders would be full of energy and passion, and that would be infectious. People would feel excited about the future, knowing that their country was in the hands of people who genuinely cared about making it a kinder, greener, and more creative place. There would be a huge focus on the arts, on protecting the environment, and on celebrating diversity. It would feel like the whole country was starting a brand new, exciting chapter in its story. Young people have some amazing ideas for making life better. One great idea could be a skill swap program. An older person who knows how to garden could teach a group of teenagers, and in return, the teenagers could teach them how to use a computer or a smartphone. Another idea might be to turn empty, run-down shops on the high street into pop-up galleries or workshops for young entrepreneurs to try out their business ideas for free. They might even create a national dream fund, where any young person with a brilliant idea to help their community could get the money and support to make it happen. Of course, there would be big challenges too. The biggest one would be inexperience. Young leaders might make mistakes because they haven't had years and years of practice. They might be a bit too idealistic and find that some of their brilliant ideas are harder to put into practice than they thought. Other older countries might not take them seriously at first, which could make things like trade and international relations tricky. There is a chance they might focus too much on fun things and forget about the boring but important stuff, like fixing the drains or collecting the bins on time. So, would a country run by young people be a happy place? I think it would be. It wouldn't be perfect, of course. There would be arguments and mistakes, just like there are now. But it would be a place built on a foundation of kindness, creativity, and a fierce desire to make the world better. It would be a place that wasn't afraid to try new things and to dream big. The energy and hope would make up for the lack of experience. I believe it would be a noisy, colorful, and sometimes chaotic place, but ultimately it would be a very, very happy one.